make sure that that program doesn't contain controversial subjects, and you're not impolite to people.
No, definitely not, Dad. You know me. I'm never, ever controversial or impolite.
Yeah. Okay.
Welcome to Conversations with your lovable, never pisses anyone off, never been banned from Facebook or YouTube, never been sabotaged or censored for politely expressing a difference of opinion, ex-Muslim host Aina, keeping it non-controversial. This is episode 14, and today I have a pretty unique guest, Zubin Madon, former Zoroastrian priest. You can follow him on Twitter at Madon, Madon. He's an excellent blogger as well over at Huffington Post. Okay, so how's it going, Zubin?
Fine. Good morning to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's nighttime where you are. Thanks for taking the time out, and it's
no problem.
Nice to speak to someone all the way from India. It's kind of cool how internet connects us all, eh?
That's right.
Yeah, I've known you on Twitter for a while, and I never knew you're like an ex-Zoroastrian priest. Can't believe you never told me that before.
Well, there's not much to talk about. Nobody even knows who Zoroastrians are, really. So, if I were to blog about it, I'd probably take 3,000 words to explain
exactly what
it is. Not even begin to explain what it is. So,
it's a religion that not many people in the West hear about, but in South Asia, we're pretty familiar with the Parsi community.
Of course, India and Pakistan.
Yeah, but even though we're familiar with the community's existence, it's still a pretty mysterious, religion.
Yes. And there are a whole bunch of urban legends that we all marry our sisters and and a whole bunch of them. I think because we are so small, we are only a community of 69,000 people. And in India, even though we've given the country its highest ranking military officer, its most decorated war heroes and industrialists, the pioneer of nuclear physics in India was a Parsi.
Oh,
Still,
cool.
It's not very widely known. Everybody in Bombay would immediately recognize us from our long noses and, very peculiar features. But your North American listeners might relate to this. We've given the world its queen. Freddie Mercury.
Oh, that's
was
right.
Farrokh Balsara. Yeah, he was,
that's right.
I think, the most famous Parsi in the world.
That's right, he was.
His parents were ethnic Parsis. I don't know if he was a practicing Zoroastrian or not.
Right. But yeah, man, that's quite a contribution for such a tiny community. Okay, so tell us a bit about the religion, where it came from, how you guys ended up in India and Pakistan.
I think it's one of the oldest organized religions still surviving. A lot of Parsis would tell you that it's the first monotheistic religion, but that's not true. God in the Zoroastrian context is not omnipotent. What Zoroastrianism says is basically there is a constant struggle between good and evil, and you have to always take the side of the good, etc., etc. And there are a whole bunch of lower divinities that look over water and air, and they have their little sidekick divinities, and we worship all of them. So I wouldn't say it's strictly monotheistic, but yeah, it's one of the oldest religions still surviving.
Mm-hmm.
So it started in Iran, maybe earlier than 2000 BC. So it was the state religion during the Achaemenid Empire and the Sassanid Empire. And then once Islam came in and the Arabs attacked Persia, the Sassanid dynasty fell. So there was a group of elite, from the northern part of Iran, known as Khorasan. It's called the province of Pars. So these people, they escaped. They took a boat and came to India as refugees. This was about 1100 years ago. And that's how these refugees came to be known as Parsis, the people of Pars. So they first landed on the west coast of India in Gujarat. We didn't speak the language or anything, so the king summoned us in his court, and the legend has it that, I mean, this is just a legend, that he puts a pot of milk filled to the brim in front of the leader, trying to convey that my land is full of people. There is no place to accommodate you. And
that anti-refugee stuff goes way back.
Not anti. Yeah, I mean, well, it's a legend, but I mean,
no, I know. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, what he was trying to say is that we are full to the brim and we got no place for you. So the leader of the Parsis, he takes some sugar or jaggery, whatever it was, and he slips it into the milk, signifying that just as the sugar dissolves in milk and sweetens the pot, we will assimilate with the indigenous people here and live in harmony.
That's kind of a nice sentiment.
Yes, and then apparently, again, it's the same legend. This is in Kisse Sanjan, which is basically like a long poem about how we got here, passed on from generation to generation. So it says the king put 5 conditions to us. First, he said, surrender all your weapons. Then explain your religion to me. Then you have to adopt the local language and the local dress. And lastly, he said, you will only have your marriage ceremonies after sunset. I don't know why he put that 5th one in, but that's how it goes. So since then, the Parsis have been in India for 1100 years.
Right, and I guess during the partition, some of them were in Pakistan and some were in India, and so we have our own community as well.
Yeah, there is a community presence in Karachi. That is correct. Most of them are in Karachi, and from what I hear, they've been migrating to Canada slowly. So even the Karachi population has dwindled to maybe 3,000 or 4,000 at the most.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, I mean, I can't imagine like being such a minority, such a tiny minority everywhere, right? But the thing is...
Yes. But it's really surprising that they survived 1100 years without getting assimilated. I mean, it is said that a lot of small groups left Iran, left Persia after the Persians lost the Battle of Qadisiyah and Nihawan to the Islamic invaders.
I'm so sorry.
A lot of them left Persia and migrated to Central Asia, went all the way to China, but most of them got assimilated and mixed. I think the group that came to India is the only one that survived all this while keeping their religion and everything.
That's pretty neat, but it's dwindling, right? As the numbers tell us, it's...
Yes, it is. It is dwindling. We never numbered beyond maybe 120,000. That was in the early 1900s. But I don't think we've ever been higher than that. But it is dwindling. But there are a lot of theories about why that is happening. Mostly it is because of social reasons. We are one of the most affluent communities in India. We have the highest per capita income, I think, in the world. I mean, considering ethnic minorities. We're all highly educated, so nobody really gets married before 30, 32. Yeah. And nobody really wants to have more than one kid, so...
Right, and then I hear that also finding a spouse that's also Parsi is very hard when the options are so limited, right?
That is very interesting. A lot of Parsis are now getting married to outside the fold, which was absolutely taboo for the last 1,000 years. I was reading this book called The History of the Parsis by Karaka many years ago, and he mentions that when the Brits got here and some of the British officers in their accounts, they mentioned the Parsi community and said it was one of the most ethnocentric tribes they had ever come across. And if somebody were to fall in love with a non-Parsi, he would literally be murdered.
Wow.
So, yeah, we've come a long way.
Yeah, that's so different from the image of Parsis that I have, a very tolerant and, not religiously violent group from what I know.
Absolutely.
But still, there is a frowning upon when someone marries outside, right?
Yes, but I'll tell you the stigma is greatly reduced
Of
from
course,
what it
from
was.
murder, yeah.
Yeah, no, and even from what it was in the 80s and 70s, women especially, they were literally disbarred, and the family would disown them and stuff like that. But now my own cousins are married to Hindus. I have lots of friends married to Catholics. My cousins living in Australia, I'm married to Australians. Yeah, things are changing.
That's great. So there's a really interesting tradition, interesting, kind of creepy thing that has always fascinated me about Parsis is this Tower of Silence and vultures. Tell me about the vultures.
Yes, so basically when a Zoroastrian dies, the body is consigned to the Tower of Silence. It's like a huge well, and the body is put there, and the vultures come and devour the carcass.
Yeah, that's got to be like the creepiest way to deal with a dead body.
Yeah, well, the Zoroastrians, they don't cremate. The Orthodox Zoroastrians, at least now, they consider the fire sacred. We are basically fire worshippers in a way.
Yeah.
So they consider the fire sacred. So they will not burn or char the remains. That's a no-no, and Parsis in India still practice a very orthodox ritualistic version of Zoroastrianism. So, yeah, but the vulture populations all over Asia are declining.
Yeah, why is that?
Well, it's mostly because of diclofenac that is being injected to cattle. That's the painkiller. And when the vultures feed on the cattle, these high doses of diclofenac are going in their systems, and that's how they're dying out. About 90% of the vultures in Asia have died out. So now we are faced with that problem.
Yeah.
Because the bodies are not, I believe my dad used to tell me that when he was young, the body used to be devoured in like 7 minutes flat. There were so many vultures.
Oh my God.
And now we have a problem where hundreds of bodies are just lying there, because there are no vultures.
Yeah, that's got to be really unhygienic and...
Yeah, so what they've done is in Mumbai, we've put up solar panels. So to kind of dry the body faster, it's working. Some say it's not. So basically, we have this 66-acre forest in prime locality in Mumbai, where we have this Tower of Silence, and it's one of the most elite residential areas in India. So of course, during the monsoons, when there's no sunlight and there is a bad stink emanating, so there's a lot of controversy going on. Yes, so the reformists have started their own crematorium, and initially there was a fight. The Orthodox said, if you are going to cremate the body, then we will not allow you to conduct the last rites at our prayer halls. So the reformists went on to make their own prayer halls.
Wow. Good for
so
them.
Now yeah, well, that's what has happened on a lot of issues, even on the issue of intermarriage. Like I said, for 1,000 years, you weren't allowed to marry anybody outside the fold. They wouldn't accept your spouse into the fold, and the Orthodox still don't. Then what happened was in 1908, this big shot Parsi, R.D. Tata, he married a French woman, and he came back with her. And he went to court saying, I want my wife to be allowed in the temples, and when she dies, I want to consign her body to the Tower of Silence. So there was a big case, and the court ultimately ruled against him, saying that these properties were for ethnic Parsis. But they also said that your children will be allowed into the fold. And that's where the huge controversy started, because the court basically said that if a man marries outside the fold, his children will be allowed, because apparently we are a patriarchal society, some shit like that. So ever since then, when the man marries outside, his kids are allowed into the fold.
Lovely.
But if a woman marries outside, her kids are not allowed. So this became a new issue. And of course, it was extremely discriminatory against the women. So,
as is every fucking religion. What is
exactly.
wrong?
So, but then, and I mean, the women fought and fought for years together. So now, as things stand, the reformists have said, okay, screw you, we'll make our own temples and own prayer halls, and we'll practice our own version of Zoroastrianism, which is not ritualistic, which is, which accepts everybody. While the Orthodox said, okay, you can do whatever you want as long as you don't enter our temples.
So do they consider them like not real Parsis?
Well, see, the word Parsi itself is really an ethnic...
it's an ethnic thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with religion. There are people like Meher Master Moose who are converting Russians to Zoroastrianism, and
I was going to ask, can you convert into it?
Well, not according to the ritualistic
the Orthodox
Zoroastrianism practiced by the Parsis. No, they claim that there is no conversion ritual. The Navjot ceremony, which is performed on children before puberty to indoctrinate them into the fold, is only performed on children of Parsi lineage, and that's how it's been. But like I said, the new reformist group that has branched out, they have their own priests, and they are performing, Navjots, indoctrination ceremonies for kids from mixed marriages, stuff like that.
Indoctrination ceremonies. Sounds lovely.
Exactly. In fact, 100 years back, it was so strict that priestly families like mine, we could not marry a girl from a non-priestly family. I mean, in my grandfather's time, it was unthinkable.
Wow.
Yeah.
Even within such a small... It just seems strategically like a really silly idea. I'm sorry to say, but the non-conversion thing, right? It's like makes your religion unsuccessful, makes your religion die out.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. But, they have... I'm just going to be the devil's advocate here, So what the Orthodox say is that all kinds of banal practices will come into the fold, like idol worship, etc., and to prevent that, we are keeping it closed. But actually, what I think is a lot of it has to do with the fact that we have a huge amount of property. We are the largest landowners in Bombay, largest private landowners. And all this property and charities are in the Parsi Trust. Okay, so what they're afraid is that people will convert just to take advantage of, this. So I think it is now, at least now. I mean, for 1,000 years, it may have been with the aim of, protecting a distinct culture, etc. But now it's really about protecting these huge coffers.
And even that protecting the purity of the culture things, just it's not unique to Zoroastrianism, obviously, but it strikes me as very supremacist. In every religion, it's like a supremacist ideology that seems to be acceptable, weirdly, right? Like,
absolutely. You see, when I was a priest in my early teens, I was indoctrinated at 11. I mean, there's a huge ceremony. You have to learn the 72 chapters of the Yasna.
Jeez. In what language?
And that's in Avastan. It's a very old, very difficult language, but the script is now written in English because almost nobody can read Avastan except the oldies.
Do you read it? Did you read it?
No, absolutely not. I did it in English.
Oh, okay.
And then you have to stay in the fire temple for 30 days and things like that. So
you did that?
Yeah, of course I did that. And I used to go, in the holidays, I used to go to pray in the fire temple, etc.
So you just sit there in a fire temple and you just pray? Like what do you do?
Yeah, for 30 days. Yeah, and that's the you have to stay in seclusion. There are all kinds of rules to be followed. It's a very ritualistic thing.
And you were 11?
Yes, I was 11.
And you
when
managed
I
to
did
do
that.
this? That seems crazy. Like at 11, I couldn't sit still in front of the
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah, it was a very long ceremony that spans about 5 to 6 hours, reciting those 72 chapters and doing all kinds of things. But so yeah, it's a very ritualistic religion. Although the priests are allowed to marry, unlike Christianity, the priests are allowed to marry. There's not much neurosis with sexuality, except for the menstruation part. They go really crazy about menstrual taboos.
The good old menstruation part.
Yes,
we have it in Islam too. It's so good to feel loved by the Creator that created your menstrual cycle.
Absolutely, and that's why the women are not allowed to become priests.
Oh, those filthy, bleeding whores.
That's right. So, yeah, we are a very ethnocentric minority. So, when I was in my teens, I used to think, well, what's the harm if we are protecting, indigenous tribes in the Amazon and the Aborigines? Why not? Why can't Parsis, have rules to keep their ethnic identity or whatever? Of course, now all that really doesn't matter to me. I gave up on it many, many years ago.
So what caused you to leave the religion, and how did that go down with the family? And
I get asked a lot by friends and family. I can't pinpoint this one instant or book that I read. I guess it's a process, I guess even when I was religious, I never really believed in the silly creation story. And even Zoroastrianism has a creation story, and I didn't believe in heaven and hell and stuff like that. And the more I read, I guess there came a time when I rejected the entire thing altogether. But I have to admit, I am one of those air-conditioned atheists, as Tariq Fatah would say. I cannot claim that I was persecuted for my disbelief. We are a very tolerant community,
right.
Except a few raised eyebrows from the family. I don't think anybody's ever questioned me or badgered me about it.
So there's your air-conditioned atheism right there.
Yeah, I'm fortunate to have been born in a time when religion is really taken a back seat and been really watered down in the community. I guess there are many reasons for that. The main one being that nobody really takes the clergy seriously. The clergy has absolutely no power anymore over the people. People do whatever they want. The Bombay Parsi Panchayat in the 1800s used to be very dictatorial, about things just like, how the Muslims have, the fatwa and stuff like that. But I mean, it wasn't binding on anyone, but they had the power to socially ostracize you if you went against the community. But even that, since the early 1900s, has completely changed. So I guess with affluence and a secular education, because we were the first ones in India to really send our women to school, apart from the Anglos. And, we embraced the British education system wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and it's said that the Parsis were like the darlings of the British Raj.
Yes, I guess so, yeah. Even though we did have people like Dadabhai Nauroji in the freedom struggle and stuff, and Firoz Shah Mehta, but I guess the community has always been predominantly pro-establishment, Even in earlier times, there are records of Parsis heading the Hindu armies. Ardeshir headed the Hindu armies of Gujarat during the Islamic invasions and stuff. So we've always been pro-establishment. In fact, the only time, there are two instances when Parsis actually revolted against the British. One was in the early 1900s when they were gassing stray dogs. They were neutering them and killing them. And the Parsis were outraged, and all of them went on strike. Because
a good reason to go on strike.
Yeah, because we are dog lovers. And then in somewhere around the 1800s sometime, two Parsis were converted by a Reverend John Wilson from Wilson College, from where, in fact, I went to Wilson College. It's just stone's throw from my house. So he converted two Parsi boys, and overnight 400 Parsi students resigned from the college, and the Bombay Parsi Panchayat went to court saying, how can you do that? How can you convert? But of course, the court paid no heed to them. So that's what then spurred all the industrialists, the rich, moneyed folks in the community to start colleges and schools, because they didn't want the Parsi kids to be influenced by the missionaries. So that's how Parsis started the first school for women in India. Jamshedji Jijiboy started those schools in the 1800s. Cool. So yeah, so I guess all these factors really contributed to the religion's slow death. I think it's on its last legs.
Right. I mean, I think it's always nice to maintain some cultural identity as long as it's kind of like powerless, something that is not toxic. You know, it's nice to have your traditions and your holidays, but none of the hate of the religion. And if that's the stuff that's going away, that's great, I think.
Absolutely. For instance, a lot of my friends, mock me. You're an atheist. Why do you celebrate Nowruz? I said, because I enjoy good food and sweets. What's wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, if you, to me, it's like a Harry Potter theme party.
Absolutely.
I don't believe Harry Potter exists, but if you're throwing a party, I'm coming.
I love that analogy.
If there's free booze, yeah, what's wrong? So there are a lot of aspects of culture,
At least you
like
guys
food,
have booze on your cultural
weddings.
Holidays, weddings.
Yes, absolutely. If you don't serve booze at the wedding, people will talk about it for like 30 years.
That's like the reverse for us. If you serve booze at the wedding, oh my gosh, people do talk about it. So mostly I've been to like weddings as a grown woman, and me and my cousins are like in the parking lot at a car, and we're like having drinks, and I'm like, I feel like a 14-year-old sneaking booze before a wedding or something, but we still have to do that.
Yeah, well, one of my cousins got married on a dry day, so you're not allowed to serve booze on a dry day in public places.
Oh.
And I think that was maybe 10 years ago, and even now when relatives talk about it, it was like sacrilege. How could he get married on a dry?
Why did he get married on a dry day?
Yeah, because they didn't get to drink at the wedding. So yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of my cultural and family get-togethers would be so much more fun if everyone was a little tipsy.
Yeah, that's right. So yes, there are a lot of aspects of culture that you can retain without believing in fairy tales. I think that's
absolutely
perfectly possible.
And it's nice. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's nice. It'll be cool to look back on, the longer we keep them going, these bizarre traditions, just like Christmas trees and things, right? Like if they're harmless, if they don't come with religion, there's nothing wrong with them.
Absolutely.
But I had no idea that Zoroastrianism was so ritualistic, even though I've had a couple of Parsi friends in school. And I mean, I went to school in Pakistan briefly for like 2 years. And that's where I had a couple of Parsi friends, and they were so secular that you'd never know. They never, ever talked about religion. There was no day where you could say, oh, this is what they're doing because of their religion. It just never came up with Parsis.
That's true. Actually, a lot of people whine about it that Parsis don't allow non-Parsis into their temples, and of course, that it's not because of any good intention. It's because of some silly ritualistic beliefs that the holy fire is so sacred that if you touch a dead body and come into the fire temple, or if you're menstruating, then the fire temple will get desecrated. And since the locals do not know about all these rules, that's why we don't allow them. That's the line that the Orthodox will give you. But I think it has had how can I say it's serendipitous outcome. It has had hidden advantage, that Parsis have never had any trouble with religious politics because they have kept their religion to themselves.
Yeah.
So even though that practice is born out of ritualistic dogma, I think it was a blessing in disguise, because in a highly diverse society, the Indian society, where there are so many religions and so many riots based on religion, and it's always on the edge. I think it has served us well to keep our fairy tale to ourselves.
Right, but I think it also helps that it's such a small minority, so you kind of get to hide away in that corner and not. Otherwise, I think if it was a bigger community, people would be more outraged at the like Islam. They don't allow non-Muslims into the holy places like Mecca and Medina, but it just comes off like a very
elitist,
big douche move. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But there's another thing. The fire temples. There's nothing really to see in them. That's another good thing. The wealthy Parsis have always been traditionally reformist. So the Tatas and the Jiji boys, they never really gave money to build temples, or we don't have gold and silver adornments in our temples like some of the Hindus' temples do, Mm-hmm. Some of the Hindu temples in India, they've got gold that's more than, that could literally buy a lot of African countries. It's no exaggeration. Yeah, trillions of dollars in gold. Rooms full of it. On the other hand, Parsi temples Zoroastrian temples are really Spartan. There is absolutely nothing except for the fire and cheap tiles and
But I want to see it, white paint. And I can't.
Well, you can actually. The fire temples in New York are open to everyone.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, of course. The Parsis who have migrated from here to North America, even Toronto, I think, must be having one.
I'll check it out.
But in New York, they have just inaugurated one a few months back, and it's open to everyone. See, outside India, Parsis are predominantly reformist and progressive. So you won't find any of these ritualistic dogmas anymore. You can pretty much enter any temple and see it.
That's good, because outside Pakistan, a lot of Pakistanis and Muslims are very... kind of like insecurely clinging on to a much more extreme version of their beliefs, like in the UK. I mean, not all British Muslims, but British Islam still tends to be terrifying.
Yes, I've heard about that.
Like my friends in Pakistan, granted, I know, I guess I come from a liberal family and they all live in a very tolerant neighborhood. So I don't have that kind of access to the very crazy and tolerant Muslims. But if I compare the people I know in Pakistan and the people that I know from Britain, they're very different kinds of Muslims.
Is it?
In Pakistan and in Saudi too, they were pretty laid back because we had compounds in Saudi, right? We all didn't really get influenced that much by the actual Saudi lifestyle and Saudi way of practicing, at least when I was growing up. I think now Wahhabism has spread everywhere.
But a few years back, I was in Bahrain. I took my rig there for repairs. And the Arabs in Bahrain, they are really liberal. None of them, I never saw any of those Arab supervisors in the yard.
You mean like the morality police? Yeah, Bahrain is different to Saudi Arabia.
No, not just the morality police, even the people, they didn't really fast. I was there during the month of Ramadan and a little bit before that, and I saw Bahrain has liquor shops, it's not like Dubai.
I know, people Saudis would drive on the weekends and
Absolutely. That bridge that connects Bahrain to Saudi, it's built specifically for that purpose. So Saudis can come in on Thursday
and drink.
It's a traffic jam, But you won't believe, one day before Ramadan, all the shops, all the liquor stores in Bahrain, they had these huge queues, and all the Arabs with these, the supermarket trolleys, they were filling cans of beer and all kinds of liquor and storing up for the 30 days.
Amazing.
when the liquor stores would close down. And some of the locals were telling me that this practice of closing down liquor stores also was started recently. I mean, I'm talking about 5-6 years ago. Before that, it was so liberal that even during Ramadan, the liquor shops used to remain open and the bars used to remain open.
Wow.
So, yeah, and ironically, the Indian Muslims on the crew, on the rig, they would go.
Right, you work at an oil rig, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So the Indian Muslims on the crew would go to the mosque in the evening, after hours, and they would be like the only ones over there. We all have our paradigms about what the Arab world is, and I was really stunned to see that Bahrain was quite liberal, the people,
Yeah, Bahrain, Dubai, I mean, they're totally different to what Saudi is like. So I've never been to either, but I had relatives in both, and I would hear. But anyway, yeah, so let's go back to Zoroastrianism.
Okay.
Priesthood, what was it like?
Well, I was a part-time priest, so...
And priest at 11. Is this common for people to be a priest at such a young age?
Yes. We only go during the important rituals and on the important days, during the gathas, when they pray for the dead and the departed and etc. So, yeah, and that's another thing, we have exactly the same faith schools called the madrasas. I didn't go to one.
Oh, you guys have something called madrasas?
Absolutely, it's the same word, but there's a big difference. It's like a boarding school where the kids go to learn the yasna. Kids of priestly families, they go there to learn.
So not any family can choose to have their child be a priest?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. There's the priest and the non-priest family. And like I said, 150 years back, you couldn't even marry somebody in the non-priestly family. But now everything's changed. So anyway, yeah, the kids, it's like a boarding school, but we call it the madrasa. And they are taught scripture, and they attend a regular secular day school in the daytime, like all normal kids. And then in the evening, when they come back to the boarding school, they are taught scriptures. So they get a proper education, they get their graduation and everything. But at the same time, they are taught scriptures till they're about 11. After which they are initiated as priests, and then they perform ceremonies, etc. And they can choose to continue working as priests in one of the fire temples, or they can choose a vocation of their choice. There is no compulsion.
Okay, so do you remember when you were staying at the fire temple, feeling like this is really boring, or?
Of course, it was boring. 30 days. But my father had really wanted me to be initiated because he never was. No, there's no compulsion.
No, I know, but this is all compulsion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in a way, yeah. But ironically, my father didn't even know the most basic Avnavar prayer. He couldn't tie his kasti knot right.
What is that?
The sadra and the kasti are basically the garments that the Zoroastrians wear all the time. And so he didn't even know even the most basic prayers. I'm pretty sure he was an agnostic.
Then why did he want you to?
I don't know. He had some kind of pride in it, and also probably because he wasn't initiated and my grandfather wasn't initiated. So if you don't do it for 3 generations, then you lose it. Something like that.
Oh dear. Okay. So some kind of status thing.
Yes. So my brother and I, we both went through it, but eventually I gave up everything, and I'm sure, even the people in the fire temple who I was in contact with, I'm sure they know that I've given up from my Facebook posts and articles. But I've never really faced any sort of discrimination or a social outcast or anything like that.
Yeah, so everyone's been pretty accepting?
Yes, I guess.
Great. So what was dating like in such a small community where you kind of feel the pressure to date another Zoroastrian, and they're pretty rare?
Yeah, well, but in Bombay, we have a huge community.
Right,
and,
so I guess, yeah.
Yeah, and the community takes all these initiatives, we have all kinds of cultural get-togethers and festivals and stuff like that. Like they will organize a paintball event or something like that for everyone between 15 to 22 or something like that, So they are trying really hard.
Yeah, I guess they're
keep
trying.
people.
Yeah,
they're trying. But the good thing is there is no imposition anymore. There are some crazies who will even today disown their daughters and disown their sons, and then 10 years later when they have grandkids and all, and then there'll be a big reconciliation.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So it really depends upon family to family how crazy your folks are. But as a community, there is no. Of course, I mean, if you marry outside, if it's a woman, her kids will still not be allowed in the Orthodox temples and stuff.
Yeah.
But like I said, there is a whole reformist support system now.
Do you come across many atheists of Zoroastrian background?
I guess. Not vocal that I can remember, but I'd say in my own friend circle there must be a couple. I can now that you mention it, I think a couple of guys they really don't believe in anything, or they don't pray, but they're like culturally they are Parsi.
Right. But apart from not believing, like, don't the younger people maybe voice their disapproval of the fact that Orthodox temples won't allow women who've married out their children in?
Yes, absolutely. They're still struggling. They're still complaining. And, since the women are educated now and everything progressive, they're questioning all these nonsense taboos against menstruation and stuff.
Religion, you gotta love it, right? But back to the Parsi community trying. I read an article about, I'll put a link in the notes to it. Can India save its Parsi community with assisted reproduction? So there's like what does it say? A select team of doctors from throughout India will soon be working on an initiative that is as much of demographic importance as it is of medical interest. This government-led program, Geo-Parsi, intends to use medical technology to boost the population of the fast-shrinking Parsi community.
That is correct. That's the Geo-Parsi initiative.
So they're going to be using like IVF and stuff to
absolutely,
assist
and there's
the fertility
a lot of counseling for couples, who are in their late 30s and who have problems conceiving, etc. But this obsession with numbers is relatively recent, I think. We've always been a small community. But I don't rule out the fact that we are going to die out eventually. But, it's a problem that most affluent societies have, countries like Japan. In a society where there is 99% literacy and everyone has at least a graduation, most people are postgraduates, they don't want more kids. That's
right. I saw a documentary about Japan too, where it's like the only country in the world where they sell more adult diapers than baby diapers.
Yeah, that's right. So they have a huge population decline problem.
Right.
And I think any community that has reached a certain level of affluence, and social status, the birth rate automatically declines. I don't see it as a bad thing. In the case of Parsis, it might be bad because they'll be wiped out. But
from 1941, that article says the population was 114,890, and then in 2011 it was 69,000. That's quite right. A big drop.
That's right. But when we landed in India, we were just a few thousand. Maybe some accounts say we were maybe 2,000 or 3,000.
Oh wow! Okay, so there was like a big boom then.
Yes, exactly. The early 1900s was the time when our population, had peaked. My grandfather had like 10 siblings. But
wow.
who has 10 siblings anymore? Yeah. So I think it's a lifestyle issue.
It's also
more than
interesting,
anything.
The strategies. They'll go to like IVF, but they won't accept converts or try to convert people, It just seems
that's their neurosis with ethnicity.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, I guess those things just don't matter to me anymore. As atheists, we know that when the lights go out, they just go out, and
Right, whether it's a vulture picking at your body or whether you get cremated or...
Absolutely. In fact, just a few days back, I told the wife, I don't want to be consigned anywhere. Just give the remains to the hospital. Let them harvest all the organs. I thought she would be outraged, but she took it really well. 15 years back, or maybe more, 15, 17 years back, this meant a lot to me, that we have to be consigned to the Tower of Silence. I mean, today it doesn't matter. While I would still want to protect the practice simply out of cultural reasons, it's an interesting practice, and if it works, then it's very environment friendly. You're not polluting.
Are there any
air.
like vulture, like attempts at vulture fertility?
Yes, the community has spent huge amounts of money building aviaries for vultures.
Yeah.
But so far they have failed. They have tied up with government zoological people, and they've done all sorts of things. I think they even went all the way up to the union government and got diclofenac banned or something
really?
like that.
Oh.
But the alternate option to diclofenac is not very cheap. So the dairy farmers still use diclofenac to inject their animals, which is causing the problem. So I don't. I mean, the solar panels have solved the problem to some extent, but it's not a perfect solution. So yeah, I think culturally, if they can save it, it's a nice thing, it's something novel, something different.
It is something different. It creeps me the hell out, but it's definitely novel.
Yeah, it's a part of our heritage, but a lot of Orthodox folks are rooting for it because of the religious significance it has, that, your soul will only go to heaven if you are consigned to the Tower of Silence. But I don't believe that anymore. I think that's BS.
Yeah. I remember dropping off a Parsi friend in Karachi because they had a compound as well where they lived, the Parsis in Karachi. So it was like a very closed community, and we saw like this, I guess, the Tower of Silence over there in the middle. And it just I just remember looking up at it, like this big, giant well tower, and people are like, oh, look, that's the place where the vultures come to get the dead bodies. And I was like,
that's
blown away. That's my only memory. Like, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, it's hard for people to believe that. I was telling a Japanese friend of mine that this is how we dispose our dead. And he thought I was, just joking. He wouldn't believe me. So, yes. Yeah, and we do have those colonies, even in India, where all the Parsis live together. And basically, the rich folks, they bought over these huge tracts of land in prime locations in the city during the colonial days, and they built homes for Parsis, which are only supposed to be allotted to ethnic Parsis, and even today, the trust deeds govern who will get the house depending on how poor you are and how needy you are. I mean, of course, in the Parsi context, somebody who's poor is a person earning less than 55,000 rupees a month, which is huge.
Right, compared to the actual poor of India, it's like...
Absolutely. The person living below poverty line in India, I think, earns a few hundred rupees a month, or even less. So, yeah, but so we have all these Parsi colonies.
Yeah.
So
and a few hundred rupees a month. Like, how much is that in dollars? Just for context,
maybe $3
a month. That is just, it blows my mind as well. Like, how do people barely survive on that? It's so sad.
So yeah, there is tremendous disparity, and compared to that, we are a very affluent community. Very affluent. Yeah.
So the fire temple, this flame in the fire temple is supposed to be like never goes out, right?
Absolutely, that's right. So there are 3 grades of fire temple. The Atash Behram, that they call it, the highest grade, is made up of 14 fires. They take a fire from a cobbler's house, a carpenter's house, a soldier's house, and each of those fires...
That's interesting.
Yeah, and each of those fires has. So traditionally, every Zoroastrian house had a burning lamp or a burning fire.
That couldn't go out.
Well, no, that could go out.
That
but
could go out.
So they used to take the fire from 14 such houses, and each of those fires would undergo some 117 to 120 rituals, and then they would be all combined, and the fire of the fire temple would be consecrated. So it's a very lengthy ass procedure. I think the last fire temple that was consecrated in Bombay took 2 years.
Wow.
Just for the rituals. Yeah, so it's a highly ritualistic, wasteful process.
Yeah.
It's a good thing they are not making any new fire temples anymore, at least in India.
Right, yeah.
And then the fire, burns 24/7. There is a full-time priest in the fire temple who tends to it. He has to get up at 12:30, 4:30 a.m.
to make sure the fire's not out. Or does it?
And he puts these huge logs of wood and performs the prayers at every change of watch between morning and afternoon to evening, and there are rituals and everything. So,
wow, sounds like a really good use of time. Sorry. But yeah, as someone who doesn't believe in any of this stuff, it just seems so silly.
Yeah, and wasteful.
Wasteful, yeah. But that's religion for you, right? So I guess that about covers the really interesting background of Zoroastrianism. Thanks so much for taking the time to...
Not at all. I hope it doesn't turn out to be the most boring episode in your formidable lineup of celebrity atheists and theists, Tariq and Beena Shah. That was a really interesting conversation you had with Beena. I was tearing my head out, the kind of apologia, blaming it on colonialism and things like that. It's just, of course, colonialism and imperialism and all that did play a role. But how long are we going to whine about that? I think even 500 years from now, an apologist is going to cite it's the British.
Agreed.
That's the cause of all our problems.
Absolutely. And while the British have become more tolerant, we still say, well, they are the ones that put the rule in Pakistan that criminalize homosexuality or something. It's silly. We can now move on. And
I think it's outright disingenuous, and it's a lie. We are pretending as if we were never homophobic before the Brits arrived.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen so many articles about how our culture, Islamic culture, is so fluid and accepting of LGBT before. Like, bullshit. Sure, we had some gay people in our history, but that doesn't change the homophobia.
This is one thing I've observed, even with the right-wing Hindutva nationalists and Hindutva terrorists is the right word to call them.
Yeah.
Who lynch people for eating beef or having beef in the fridge. There is this belief that they have that they are the most persecuted people on the planet. Every right-winger, every zealot, orthodox, they have the same thing. And in
Christian persecution, Muslim victimhood, it's with everyone.
In fact, I'm going to write a piece on that next. Even on the rig, I meet white Christian conservatives from the Bible Belt, from Louisiana and Texas. And if you listen to them, you think that white Bible thumpers in America are the most persecuted people. Absolutely. The Mexicans are taking away their jobs. The black people are getting all the benefits and the Medicare while they do no work. And they are the only ones who are working all hard, and they are being persecuted. And it's the exact same with Hindutva extremists from the saffron belt. Every problem with Hinduism is either a product of the British rule or of the Mughal and the Muslim invasion of India.
Right.
So,
blame it on someone else.
Absolutely. So if you talk to a Hindutvavadi and if you discuss the Gujarat pogrom, in which the Hindu mobs took voters lists and targeted Muslims and killed over 2,000 Muslims with state backing and with cops being complicit. And you say that and they'll say, oh, but what about the time when the Muslims burned that train full of Hindus. What about Godhra? And then if you say, well, this lynching somebody just because he had beef in the refrigerator is wrong, and they'll say, oh, but what about Aurangzeb? 400 years ago, he killed so many Hindus and he destroyed so many temples. And you say, it's always their tribe is the victim.
Right. It's like how many Muslims will use Western intervention or Western imperialism for excusing Islamic terrorism, right?
Absolutely.
It's the same thing, just different shades of it. Even the Western far right, it's two sides of the same, or many sides of the same coin.
Yeah, I guess the persecution complex plays a very, very major role in their thinking, and all kinds of atrocities are justified just because one of their co-religionists was persecuted 600 years ago. Yeah. It's absolutely irrational, but that's what drives them.
Yeah. You wrote a great article in the Huffington Post recently called Terror Has No Religion, debunking the regressive left's cliches, which I really enjoyed. I have to say that I'm a bit annoyed at the term regressive left now because it's just been ruined. So I kind of just I roll my eyes and avoid things that mention it. But you did a great job because you're actually talking about the regressive left. Many people now on that bandwagon are just anti-left. So
absolutely. Yeah. Well, there are a lot of terms that get misused like that. At the risk of having my Twitter feed bombarded, I'll say that intersectional feminism is another such term. Every term is, misused, but what can you do about it?
Yeah.
As long as we stick to the right context.
Right. And I appreciated that you stuck a disclaimer for bigots in there. This is an attempt to show a causal link between violence and Islamist ideology. Anyone who thinks that the vast majority of Muslims bear responsibility for the acts of their co-religionists will find no vindication here. I think it's perfect and it's sad, but this is what needs to happen now, because anytime you criticize Islam, a whole truckload of crazy right-wing bigots will jump in and be like, yeah, they're foreigners, they don't even speak English, and just nasty non-criticisms of ideology.
Absolutely. In fact, every time I post something anti-Islam, an article, a whole bunch of Hindutva trolls will start following me on Twitter, and then so it's an unfortunate fallout, I guess.
Yeah, at least you're doing your part to inoculate against those crazies jumping on, right? You're saying I'm against you too. And I think that's important. Anyway, yeah, thank you so much. I'll add links to your pieces. We even co-authored a HuffPo piece together. That was fun.
That's right. That was on the censorship. That's so weird. The Facebook and YouTube censoring atheists and ex-Muslims, but allowing hate pages.
And ISIS, Nazi pages.
And ISIS recruitment videos. Yeah, it's weird.
Gosh. Even now, even though my podcast was banned off of YouTube twice and I finally managed to get it back, I didn't get my Facebook back yet, and I have no hopes of it either. But
I don't know if it's the people at these social media places or whether it is the mass reporting that does it. I don't know what it is. But it's a real problem. Yeah,
well, with me, as soon as I put the first episode of my podcast up, within hours it was taken. So someone is clearly watching. And then when I re-put it with a brand new account that I created to put it up again, that was taken down within hours. So clearly there's either a group watching or I don't know. And meanwhile, other people who uploaded it on my behalf, the same content stayed up perfectly fine on their channels. It's me they have a problem with, not really the content.
Interesting.
But yeah, anyway, such is life. You keep fighting the good fight and writing excellent articles.
Okay, thank you. And looking forward to part 2 of Tariq's episode.
Oh yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
You
Yeah.
sent a great selfie too for that while watching the.
It was so crazy. It was funny in the beginning with all the Assalamu alaikum and the Arab appropriation and the air conditioned atheists and all. But then he just goes on a different tangent and suddenly becomes defensive and dismissive. But I read that summary that somebody put up on that podcast, and it really summed it up really well about what Tariq was trying to do on that episode.
Yeah, someone's writing a blog post about it. I mean, I think it's hit a few nerves with quite a few people, this conversation. I'm glad that
it was a very accurate description.
That conversation was really, it was something. But kudos to all my guests who come on outside of their comfort zone, and I got to give them credit for that, because people are usually comfortable going where they will be agreed with and nodded along with, and
absolutely, and that's what makes it interesting. And I suspect that's what makes that's what will make this episode really boring. But I'm hoping it's not the worst on your
on your list. We should have scheduled like an argument.
Really?
Next time, part 2.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. See you. Bye.
All right.
Have a good day.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Polite Conversations. You can support this podcast by sharing the shit out of it, making some noise about it, or contributing via Patreon. Patreon.com/nice mangoes. No E in mangoes. Also, you can follow me on Twitter @nicemangoes. If you want to make a one-time donation instead of a monthly Patreon one, you can do so via PayPal. nicemangoes.blog@gmail.com. Remember, no E in mangoes. If you've got an interesting story and would potentially like to be a guest, you can email me there too. A special thanks to Dylan Beck for theme music, sound, and production help.